We had good times together. You know, and I have that feeling because she got Alzheimer's and left, she didn't really get to see my marriage. Once I got married, I have a million questions for her. I always say I would like one more day, one more long day with my mom to ask her questions and fill in some blanks. I think we all have that. If you lost your mom to Alzheimer's, it's that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me about the size of your family. Who else was in your family?
The immediate family was very small. It was my parents, myself, and my brother Kenny.
Okay.
Really close to us around the corner was my mother's sister, my Aunt Sally and Uncle Bill. Their two sons, Ronnie and Bobby. They had a third son, Ricky, who was retarded and was institutionalized, as was the way of treatment back then. I grew up very close to my cousin Bobby. We were the same age. So that was pretty much, we spent all our holidays, the 8 of us, together.
And you both went through the Long Beach schools?
Went through the Long Beach schools. On my father's side, there was my cousins, Linny and Dory and Sherry and Elliot. And I've recently reunited with that side. So that's been very nice.
Okay. Is there a way to encapsulate your early family life in a phrase or in a word or in a brief thought? What was family life like?
It's a great question. Family life for me was, I would say, up and down. I have many great memories. I had a tumultuous relationship with my father. It was up and down.
You mean banging heads, locking horns, that kind of
He was a tough guy, and I think I wanted to feel and experience warmth and a love from him that wasn't within his nature to readily display. You know, and it's the way it was. And now, at this point in my life, I don't hold bad memories. And so my early life was, I don't think it certainly wasn't terrible and abusive and all those things you might hear about, but it was challenging in some ways. You know, my mother was always the go-to person for me. She was this citadel of strength in a lot of ways.
Were there other influential or strong adult influences in your life besides your mother and father?
My aunt and uncle, my Aunt Sally and Uncle Bill, and
How, as an extension of that question, how did you decide to become an educator? Was there somebody who influenced that decision?
You know, when I teach college now, and I teach courses, I always like to hear, well, what put you into education? And so often it's a teacher. And it seems often that people were inspired by a teacher, and now they're teaching that same grade, that same subject.
Did that happen to you?
Yes. Jay Abramowitz was my 11th grade English teacher. He was funny, he was smart, he was engaging. You loved going to his class. You loved going to his class. And because my mother worked at the school, we knew his whole family. And I babysat for his kids when I was a little older. He was great, and he passed away young. And I remember being very struck by that loss.
Tell me about the other unforgettable teachers that you've had in your life.
I had my early years of college, Bill Williams. He was an English professor, a poet. He was this, it was in 1969, so I really hadn't known any warm, soft, fuzzy men yet. And William Williams was that. I can picture his face, very gentle man. And then my next memorable professor was Richard Cipher, brilliant. He made me love romantic poetry. He was great. I had a Dr. Brickman for education. I just had really decent, school was good for me. School was, when I was a kid, school was good. And through all the years, 33 years of a teaching career, no matter what else was going on in my life, school was always great. It was a consistent, positive place.
How fortunate you were, Judi.
I feel very blessed. I never have taken for granted how blessed I was to have a career and a passion that happened to be the same thing.
What might have been one of the most difficult decisions in your career that you had to make?
Another great question. I'll tell you what it was. It was the decision to retire. That's absolutely what it was. Teaching has defined me, perhaps because I don't have children of my own. Teaching was really, I was a teacher. I became a wife, I was a daughter, I was a sister, but I was a teacher. So proud to be one, so blessed to have a very successful, great career. And I knew I was allowed to retire at 55. And as that approached, I began to have a great deal of anxiety. You know, you get a an incentive when you retire right on time, so that was interesting. And if you don't get the incentive, they say stay at least 2 more years. So initially, I had no intention of retiring. It was unfathomable. And ultimately, through a lot of discussions with many people, Betty Stosey and Cass Howard were my mentors as a teacher here. Everyone said, there is life after Brentwood. You might not feel like there is. And walking into Tom Eller's office to hand in my retirement papers was literally gut-wrenching. I felt weak-kneed. I felt like it's probably a huge mistake. And my last year of teaching was just filled with so much focus on this is my last year. Retirement planning was much harder than being retired, which has been surprisingly delightful.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. I'm not surprised to hear you say that. You're not alone in that experience.
Right.
But it's wonderful to hear that once the decision is made and the experience is encountered, that the weight is off.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I had envisioned my last year as laden with sadness, and that the last walk out of Brentwood High School that I ever took, I would be inconsolable.
Oh.
And my last year was different. I had fabulous classes. My aim was to be like Clem Stanzik. I wanted to have my last year be as successful and vibrant as my first year. And I like to think I accomplished having a great last year. A lot of love from the kids, a lot of good feelings, but a lot of feeling about retirement, the parties coming up, the packing up my room of 33 years.
I'm not sure whether this is a question that might be a fair question or a good question, but I know that as a teacher, over the years, you received many awards and many gifts from students, from parents, from the system. What's one of the gifts that you remember receiving that meant a lot to you?
I think that, the big one was the New York State Teacher of the Year, first runner-up. That was great, going to Albany. Tom O'Brien and Gail Swenson were there. My husband drove up with me. It was very exciting. But I think the one that became very special was I had been lucky enough to be Brentwood High School Teacher of the Year twice. And in the twilight of my career, in 2004, I had a really great bunch of kids, just wonderful. I still stay in touch with them. And to my surprise, that year, I got the note that I was Teacher of the Year. And for some reason, having, now I was so much older and more mature, it was in 10-year splits, interestingly enough. That was really memorable. I remember experiencing that very fully, what it meant, how lucky I was that in this huge school to receive this recognition. I felt very honored. And through the years, the letters, the little letters from kids, the thank yous, those probably mean the most. I tell young teachers that at the very beginning of your career, get a folder and just call it accolades. Put anything you want in it, a letter that they write on their final exam, and that you will someday, as that folder grows, you will remember how lucky you are. I have things hung up, poems. I'm very blessed.
Good. Do you remember your first paying job, Judi?
My first paying job, babysitting.
Okay, that was.
And my first real job was, my mother was in the Democratic Party in Long Beach and got me a job as the person who takes money for people going into the beach. So I stood in the beach booth, let all my friends in all the time, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah. You mentioned before that your family celebrated all the Jewish holidays. Was there one holiday that was more important than the others? Was there one big annual blast? Or family gathering? Maybe better to call it that.
Interestingly enough, I think holidays and family gatherings have been greatly improved since I got married, because my husband's family really celebrates the holidays with joy and flair. I remember holidays when I was younger as like, I don't have the greatest memories in some ways. Thanksgiving was fun.
Okay.
Hanukkah, I love the presents. Thanksgiving was a good one. And I like the celebration of Passover. My parents did that nicely. That was always a kind of interesting holiday with the matzah and the plate and all that. The
ritual, sure.
The rituals,
yes.
The rituals are great.
What would have been an after-school interest that would have motivated you when you were still in elementary school or high school?
Sports.
Okay.
When I was younger, I was athletic. I loved kickball. I loved tennis. different sports. When I was,
okay.
you know, younger, in high school, I got my school letters. I was volleyball, one of the captains in volleyball. It was great. It seems like ages ago. But
And I gather that English was one of your favorite subjects then.
English was, but I was a member of the Future Nurses of America. My intent was to be a nurse.
Okay. What was your least favorite subject when you were in high
Math,
school? Okay.
like so many of my English teaching colleagues. It's that right brain, left brain stuff.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite season of the year back then?
I always loved autumn.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I know that's odd for a teacher. We're supposed to like summer.
I'm thinking Long Beach, summer, but autumn.
Yeah,
Okay.
summer was great in Long Beach.
Yeah.
But autumn, you know, I like the beach when it wasn't crowded.
Yes.
I like the beach when all the people left.
Yes.
And it was back to being my beach, my boardwalk. Autumn, the colors, Robert Frost poetry.
Yes.
You know, there's something really crisp. Autumn feels like it's a new beginning every year, which is ironic because it's when flowers and plants and trees are dying off. Autumn, this new school years was
Is it
very
still your
exciting.
favorite season?
Yes.
Or it is.
I like the weather, the temperature,
yes.
the colors, the air.
Yes.
I like the transition. That's why, you know, when I think of retiring to somewhere,
Yes.
I like seasons.
Me too.
There's an excitement. You do too.
Me too.
Yeah. There's an excitement when it goes from one season. That first walk outdoors in the
And
spring.
we're always ready when it changes.
Yeah.
We're ready for the change.
Even now, like this week was such a warm October week. We're all happy it's chilly again.
That's true.
Yeah.
How about a favorite aroma or an aroma that it evokes wonderful memories?
My mother's Estee Lauder Youth Dew. It's a way too strong a perfume. But I think probably 10 million women of her generation wore it. And that smell is very evocative. And also the scent, my husband's colognes, when I smell a cologne that he wears anywhere else, it's like a nice
So those
feeling.
are those aromas, if I can leap to what I'm hearing you say, is they both have very loving connotations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell me or tell us from your first day at school, which was in kindergarten, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you attend school all the way through? What are the schools that you've attended?
I started school because my mother was the principal's secretary at Central School. Somehow I was able to begin kindergarten at 4.5. And I was at Central School, have not a single memory of it. But then midway through kindergarten, my parents moved to a different part of Long Beach, and I went to East School. Did your wife go there too? That's so funny. I bet we could share teachers' names, Molly May Pieri and Jeanette Raffel and Ben Strauss. And the first day of elementary school, I remember feeling shy and scared. I was new. It was the middle of the year. And I went to Mrs. Siegel's elementary school room, and she said, we have a new girl, boys and girls, and Linda Zimmerman will be her helper. And she assigned Linda Zimmerman to me, the prettiest girl in the class. She was wearing those shirtwaist dresses. I can see it. Her long blonde hair, her little smile. And it was so nice to have her. And she followed me all day through school. It's like buddied up. And I can name my teachers, elementary, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Elementary school, oddly, is more vivid to me than middle school. Middle school is like a blank. I think I must have had like a hormonal daze or something. But elementary school, it was a very closely knit community. I went with my cousin Bobby, and all the kids knew each other.
Where was middle school?
Middle school was Long Beach Junior High School, which at the time was on Lindell Boulevard. I remember some teachers. We had the scariest guy in the world was our dean. I bet your wife knows him, Mr. Caruso.
Oh,
Ask
Joe
her.
Caruso.
Joe, how do you know Joe Caruso?
She talks about him all the time.
Scary.
She loved him.
Oh,
She loved him. He was an ex-Marine.
He certainly must have been an ex-Marine. I don't know how she came to know that. He was the guy with the keys walking around the halls, and he screamed in your face.
She was upset with him because he did not attend their reunion when they recently had one.
Wow.
And asked him to come, please come.
I bet you remembers Mrs. Alterac, who could have been at her reunion, Bernice Alterac.
This is great, Judy. This is wonderful. What degrees? And then the next one was Long Beach High School. So
Long Beach High School.
Where did you go after that?
For college, was going to go to New Paltz, but my parents were going through big money problems at the time. So I ended up going to Nassau Community for 2 years. I felt embarrassed because I was a smart kid going to the community college. But it was great. And so I put me in a position to remind my own students how great Suffolk community might be. Nassau was great. And I entered Nassau a straight, quiet, high school girl and became like a crazy hippie within 3 months. Those were incredible years in college, 69 and 70. Yes. I experimented with everything possible. I loved it. I have the fondest memories of those years. Great professors, great experiences. And then after that, college was very serious. I went to Hofstra. I realized that being a psychology major wouldn't land me a job. And I just segued very naturally into English teaching. Had a great experience at Hofstra, student taught at Baldwin Harbor Junior High, and knew I only wanted to teach junior high school.
Did you do your graduate work at Hofstra too?
Nope, Stony Brook. And then I got the MA plus 90 at different institutions. Okay. I got a counseling degree for addictions counseling.
So you're certified in a whole bunch of things now, besides being a certified teacher.
Right.
What are some of your other certifications?
Addictions counseling. I was working with eating disorders. I had gone through a huge metamorphosis with my own weight and ultimately got into doing counseling with people with weight issues or anorexia and bulimia at South Oaks Hospital, and then briefly in a private practice. I began teaching at the Long Island Institute and Brooklyn College about 15 years ago. And very recently I started teaching at Stony Brook and feel very fortunate. Really? Being a college adjunct professor is so stimulating.
I'll bet.
It made it easier. My friend Chico said it would. It made it easier to retire knowing I could still be a teacher.
That's correct.
I could not remove my identity as teacher, so I get to keep it.
Do you have a sense of what may have been one of your worst professional days?
How lucky am I? I have to think hard about that.
Okay.
I remember, and you might have had this too, my earliest years, Dave Martz would call me into the office at the end of each year. It was Tom O'Brien. We were excessed every year. Yes. The changing population, changing budget. I literally, for the first 7 years, and I loved teaching.
Didn't know if you were going to have a job.
No, was told I, got the green envelope or whatever color it was.
That's where the union was really important.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I didn't know that back then. It was Cass Howard who reminded me how important the union always was. Yeah. But it was weird. Tom O'Brien, the current principal, we still talk about that. Getting excess year after year, not knowing. Yeah. Go look for a job. If you find something, take it.
Yeah. Did you ever have a plan B in case you didn't teach what you would have done?
It's funny you asked that. I graduated from Hofstra in 1974. Our professors, my student teaching professor, Jerry Davis, he said, very few of you will get jobs. There are very few jobs, particularly in English. Have a backup plan. I didn't. And I remember there were no computers, and I remember getting the list from Hofstra of every school district on Long Island and typing a letter. I sent an application literally to every school district. I also took one graduate course in teaching reading across the curriculum because it was advised that that might be a helpful thing. That might be helpful and set me apart. So I had a first interview in Southampton, then West Hampton Beach, then Middle Country, and here, a Long Beach girl. I didn't know these places. And then I had Middle Island, and then I get a letter from this place called Brentwood. And I'm like, Brentwood, where is that? I look on a map, and all I'm thinking of in my head is Brentwood, California. Yes. So I'm saying, Brentwood, this must be just like the one in California. Well, it wasn't, but its own way, it's been better.
What year was that?
1974. I had 3 interviews the day I came here. Okay. 3 different schools. I was interviewed by Frank Carnesi and John Galaris first for a position in the 7th grade center. And then they said, you're a nice girl. Go see Tom Campy. There's an opening there. So I went to Sonderling and, sweating in my interview outfit. And I was interviewed by Tom Campy. He was delightful. I know you remember him.
Sure.
And he said, you know what? You're a nice girl. I want you to go see Gilda Manton. There's an opening there, too. Meanwhile, I wanted junior high. I looked so young at that point. And I went to Gilda Manton. Love at first sight.
Yes,
she was Earth Mother.
Absolutely.
I mean, she practically called me Bubala during the interview. And I knew the interview went well. I remember hugging her goodbye, thinking, why couldn't she be in the junior high schools? And I ultimately got a call from Frank Carnesi for a 3/5 position at the 7th grade center.
How about that?
Yep, and I had to accept it. And then 45 minutes later, I got a call from Gilda Manton at the high school for a full position. I had to take it for the money, my
Yes.
college loans.
Yes.
And Frank Carnesi kiddingly told me he didn't forgive me for years that I did that. But I'm so happy I ended up in high school.
Oh, yes. And the
So-
thing that you were afraid of, you loved.
Loved. I mean, I did get asked for passes my first couple of years and paid student lunch prices if I ate in the cafeteria. But it was so amazing going from being a college kid to a teacher in 3 months. I went from being
Now,
a
what about the
college kid.
official interview? Who interviewed you?
Um,
Was there an interview?
You know what's so funny? I remember John Galaris and Frank, and then Tom, and then Gilda. I do not remember.
Okay.
I'm sure I had to be interviewed by Mr. Yankowski or Mr. Martz, but I don't recall that I do. I
Okay.
loved Dave Martz, my first principal.
Do you remember a question he asked you?
I remember a question Frank Carnesi asked me.
Okay.
It was like that hellish question you got warned about in college. It was along the lines of, well, Judi, they say in these days and age, why are we teaching the classics to these kids? Why are we teaching them when there are so many more modern things to read? Why would you teach the classics if we asked you to? And I remember Dr. Brickman's words from an education course in my head. It's okay to look like you're thinking. So I put on my thinking face and I thought, okay, he's looking to hang me here. What is he looking for?
Yeah.
So I thought, and I said, I think that teaching the classics are extremely valuable. It's literature that's lasted for centuries. It will be up to me to bring it up to modern times for my students.
Good answer.
Yeah, it was a good answer. Sweating pouring out of me, but it was probably, I remember them looking at each other going, oh, okay, we didn't nail her on that one. Yeah, it was that moment of like, phew. And Tom's interview, Tom was, if you remember Tom Campy, it was a completely Tom Campy
Yes.
moment. And Gilda was, like I said, Earth Mother. And then I met Kenny Moss. The first person I met from Brentwood Schools was in Long Beach at a bar.
That was the first year of the alternative school, too.
And I was so sure I was in the wrong place. My really good friend, Amy Citron, said my cousin, Kenny, she set it up for me to meet him and then go to his apartment. And he was eons above me in intellect. And I remember sitting there going, I am in big trouble. This is my colleague, and it really greatly concerned me.
That's so
It was so funny because he was warm and wonderful, but he was Kenny Moss. He was of a different ilk.
But he had that effect on everyone when they first met him.
Yes, and you know what he showed me? You're going to remember this. He said, let me show you the kinds of things I do in the classroom. And he showed me the taped version of I Heard It in the Boys' Room, a play he and Jeff Goldschmidt
Yes.
had done. I'm watching it going, oh my God.
Judi, I still have that video that is on an old-fashioned 3/4-inch tape or something, and I have to have it converted, but we still have it.
I remember sitting there watching it. Yeah, it was amazing. That was my introduction.
Wow.
It was wow. I remember going home going, what am I going to do? I met my colleague. They're all going to be like him. Will I fit in?
Oh.
And, Betty and Castor were my real, Gilda, Betty and Castor saw me.
You had a great first impression, though, of the district.
Excuse me.
Of this place called Brentwood.
I had good interviews.
Yeah.
I loved Gilda, and I reluctantly took the high school position because I needed to pay back loans.
Yeah.
But, that first day of school, I'm sure you remember it. Walking in here as a teacher, I don't know if you remember this word, Eaton. Do you remember an Eaton grade book?
No.
The Eaton books with the grade book we had
Yes,
through the
yes.
When I was in college, I for some reason couldn't wait to get my Eaton, my own grade book, my students' names.
Yes.
I used to play school with my brother. Tortured him, teaching him English and making him sit down and writing his name and grades in my book.
I know the book you mean. I just never met.
It's not an Eaton anymore either.
No,
That's
okay.
what sticks in my
Okay.
head that I
All right.
couldn't wait. And so
Oh,
there
that's
I
all right.
was.
I remember the Delahanty books from the city.
Were those the ones where you fill in the
Little card. underneath.
Yeah.
Those were in the
Right.
city system.
Right. Yeah, the placement cards. You'd
Placement
have to,
cards.
yeah. So
So
funny.
you knew where everybody sat, and you could see.
Yeah. And didn't you know names quickly? And I remembered everybody's names within a week. By the end of my career, it was like, hi, sweetie. Too many names.
I am bad, Judi. I must admit.
With names?
With names, I'm bad.
I was good
It's
the
always
first
a
20
struggle.
years.
But what I'm hearing is that you were off to a great start with some
was.
trepidation, but you were off
Nervous.
To a great,
I think every first year, teaching teachers now, I do courses for teachers. In August, those school dreams start kicking in. You have your school dreams, and up until last year, there is a certain anticipation before the first day of school. I know you had it right to the end.
Oh, absolutely.
You're meeting 120, 130 new kids
That's right.
who are going to be your charges for a
That's
year.
right.
Will they judge you? How will they look at you? What
Jeff
will you
Wilf
say?
recently told me about someone he had met who had written a book on what teachers dream. And it appears that for the rest of our lives, we have similar dreams.
School dreams.
That's
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Being late for class.
Right.
Not being able to find our locker.
Right. Going out on my last one that I remember was I went out on a free period and I got back way too late. I was in trouble and I remember driving fast, some weird dream imagery.
I'm always lost in the high school.
Oh, really?
I am lost. I can't find my classroom.
And what do you think that means?
I'm just not prepared. I'm disorganized.
I was always the queen of organization. It was very funny, my reputation with my colleagues.
How do you think Brentwood is different from other school districts, and how do you suspect that it's probably the same as every school district? Because your experience has been primarily here in Brentwood. All.
People get amazed when I say I've been
Right.
in one high school for
Right.
33 years.
Right.
I think it's different in its largeness. To try and explain to
it's the
people
size.
the size. If you were going from the music wing in Ross to the social studies wing, you're talking about a hike, and now they've added basically new sections. The largeness of its student body, its diversity has always been there, but its diversity has changed.
Yes.
And I think it's the same in that people would like to lay a bunch of problems on Brentwood. Well, they have problems with bad kids here, or they have the same things in Half Hollow Hills and all the other schools. And I think kids are kids. What I found that sets teachers apart in Brentwood is that people are very happy to be here, and excellent. I don't think you could offer kids a better group of teachers in any district.
What do you think?
Dedicated.
One of the charges frequently leveled at Brentwood, I'm sure it's leveled elsewhere too, but the charge that there's a lot of nepotism here. Right now, it's a hot button right now at the present time, again. But what's your take on that?
Regarding the present situation, I'm very unhappy that politics has become a negative influence in this particular school year. Nepotism, I think we'd be naive to imagine a school district free of the occasional hiring of the business manager's or board member's son. I think you have to hire really competent people. And if there's a legacy involved, if John Sherin had a daughter named Susie, and Susie Sherin came for her interview and had heard for 30 years how great Brentwood was, and Susie was a competent person, why not hire young Miss Sherin? She comes to the school already believing in its greatness. She comes to the school prepared to be loyal. She comes to the school as a believer. And
See, I agree totally with what you're saying, only because I think one of the things that the critics don't realize is that the sense of family that Tony Felicio
Absolutely.
provided us with this,
right.
more than any other single person, I think. He stamped Brentwood with a sense of extended family.
Right.
And there is a commitment and a loyalty
Exactly.
that makes
Exactly.
for excellent morale.
Excellent morale. That would be my only present concern, that morale would be changing. It's probably just a blip on the screen, but you're exactly right. Tony Felicio was here almost my entire career.
Yeah.
I was very, very close with Tony, very close. I was often at his house the week he died, and I had his daughter, Donna, in class. She's an incredibly dedicated teacher.
Yeah.
His daughter, Debbie, worked with me. Wonderful. My friend Chico's daughter came here to follow in both her parents' footsteps as a guidance counselor.
Yes.
Who could ask for more than
Yes,
that?
exactly.
To get an employee who knows the district, knows the culture, and comes in here respecting the Brentwood schools.
The other thing I want, before we leave this topic, I think I'd like to have it on record, is that while we have always been an inclusive community that reached out for diversity, to bring diversity to Brentwood, whether it was to hiring minority teachers or looking for women when women were not that numerous on the high school faculty, or whether it was to going to Puerto Rico. I'm talking about the extended community of Brentwood, going
Right.
to Puerto Rico to bring workers to
Right.
Brentwood, knowing that they were going to come to the schools eventually. There has never been an exclusivity to we are of this community, of that community. We are not a white, a black, a Latino. there's always been a sense of inclusion, and it would be a shame if that balance were to be lost.
Right. Right.
This is not about you, though, and so I want to get back.
But that's something that concerns me. Some of the things leveled recently spoke about racism, and that's just bad politics.
Yeah.
For any former administrator or current
Really?
teacher to be leveling those charges, I have to think that it's about someone's agenda because it's not about reality.
Yeah.
The inclusiveness here is great. Is it great to have a faculty as diverse as the student body? Certainly, but you want great teachers and counselors
That should
and
be the important thing.
administrators.
And it's about the academics.
It's about the academics.
It's about achievement and performance of students. Did you, have we talked about all of the various assignments or activities or programs? I mean, you mentioned some of the certifications and some of the things that you've done. Were there things that we haven't talked about, Judi?
For many years, I was the twirling coach.
Well, that's right.
I'm a non-twirler. But I worked with that was the year I had Donna Felicio, Cindy Pisani, and Fran. I mean, just a great group of girls. I hear from them. I was the twirling coach for years, worked very closely with the Green Machine, went to summer camp with the Green Machine, went to Washington, D.C. for Clinton's inauguration.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, it was great. It was a great job for a younger teacher.
What a great honor Brentwood had.
Great honor. I mean, Thanksgiving Day parades. Yeah, I stood right next to Ed McMahon, and the Green Machine was awesome. Still is. Green Machine is a phenomenal piece of Brentwood's history and present. Twirling coach. I was senior class advisor, junior class advisor. I was very briefly a track coach, which could only mean one thing: that they desperately needed a track coach.
Wow.
It was not my area
Wow.
of knowledge or interest. But
Was your professional teacher training sufficient to prepare you for coming to Brentwood and assuming the role that you did when you walked into the classroom for the first time? Were you prepared, or was there a lot of on-the-job training that took place?
You know what? I think so many of us have the same experience. The Education 101 courses, they're interesting, some theories, some Bloom's taxonomy. You don't get that real sense of reality until you student teach. And student teaching is so helpful. You get that reality. But that first day you walk in and there's no cooperating teacher in the corner, and you have, 60 eyes looking at you and waiting for you to set the tone. It's on the job experience.
Yeah.
And you do, I love mentoring new teachers, and you tell them you'll find your beat. The first couple of years you're gathering materials. I mean, I'm sure home somewhere in your house, you have a file cabinet with huge amounts of materials for a social studies teacher.
You bet.
And you find your beat as a teacher. You can take Harry Wong, the guy who writes all about new teaching, and he's gone around, he spoke at Brentwood, very famous. His whole first line was steal, steal, steal. When you're learning to become a teacher, steal some ideas, steal some materials, steal. I mean, it sounds so unethical to use the word steal, but I think his point was, look around you. Whose ideas do you want to emulate? Where do you want to find out how to do things right?
That reminds me of a throwback to the 60s kind of.
Abby Hoffman.
Abby Hoffman.
Steal this book. We could say that title to every teacher in the school now, and they'd go, Abby who?
Abby who? All right, here's a toughie, because you either have thought about it and can articulate it, or you may want to think about it before you say anything. But besides the job description, which got you into the classroom in the first place, you had a purpose for coming in every day. They're getting out of bed in bad weather and good weather and showing up and being here because you had a job to do. What was that job? What was your purpose?
Another great question, John. It's very funny to me you use the word purpose, because that one word was the main fear I had, that if I make this decision to retire, what will be my purpose in life? Because whatever else I had in life, my purpose was to wake up and go to school and be a teacher. My purpose here was, it's kind of corny, but I'm going to use the word love. I think seeing students who recognized that I loved what I was doing, and loving my students, I enjoyed the kids so much. How young we stayed every year, coming in and meeting hundreds of teenagers, and you're on your feet and you're active. My purpose was to educate in my specific subject, to try and surprise kids with literature, that a book that they might have thought they didn't want to read is actually fascinating. engage the kids, also to try and make the kids, and this is something I'm concerned about in our over-tested New York State, to make the kids want to learn, become lifelong learners in school, in sports, in life. Learn, soak things up, read a newspaper, be aware of the world you live in, politically, ethically, every way possible. So what was my purpose was to come here, and Blanche Dubois might have said, to have the joie de vivre. I love saying, I was an English teacher. It's been the best. I was filling out a form in a doctor's office last year. New doctor, when you get older, you have more doctors all of a sudden, career. And I get to the one profession. And I turned around and said to Lenny, oh my God, what am I going to write here next year? He goes, you're right, retired. And I was aghast. I will not write retired. It was like I wasn't letting go of that moniker. I was an English teacher.
You still are. Of course you are.
Yes, exactly.
You're certified for life.
I'm certified, certified for life. As you are.
As you are. Absolutely.
And you continue teaching.
And redirected. That's all.
Redirected. I'm getting a real kick now out of, I'm an adjunct. It's when students have to email me a paper, they always preface it with, Dear Professor Weissman. And I'm like, oh, what an honor. It's just such a great career. Teaching is such an alive, great career. I forget that the masses of people go to jobs they don't like.
That's right.
I can't imagine living a life like
we were.
How fortunate we were. We are.
And you're constantly in touch with, gathering from the stories that you've already told us, with your former colleagues and with former students. So that it's not been severed, it just continues.
It's not been severed.
It's changed.
Coming here today to meet you, John, it's my first day back in the high school since my last day in June. And I have to admit, it's odd to be walking around here, not part of it, but as a visitor. Yeah.
Were you ever active in the union? Were you an active member of the union?
I was certainly a paying and appreciative and grateful member of the union. I had no incidents.
You were involved with other things, though, and there's only a limited amount of time that anyone has to devote, and you have to decide where your emphasis goes.
I felt very well taken care of by the union at all times. I remember, you probably remember, there was a year we were going to strike.
Yes, oh yes.
And it was a year, it had to be early in my career because I was broke. And I was very nervous about not being able to strike because I needed the money. But it was pointed out to me that it's not an option. We strike, you strike. And you understand the mentality of how important your union is.
Have you ever been afraid to come to work?
No. In night school, one year when I was teaching night school in the earlier years, there was an incident with a gun that shook me up. That was long ago, before this proliferation of violence. But no, I've never been afraid.
What makes you angry, Judi? And that's a general kind of question. I'm not saying, what in your classroom would make you angry. I mean, what makes you angry?
Very disrespectful kids.
Okay.
Kids who are cursing out teachers in the halls. Like, I found that in my classroom it was just fine. But if I had whole duty and was unknown to people, disrespectful children, I'll tell you what else makes me very angry, is creating over-tested kids who from third grade on are testing, teachers being forced to teach to a test. I'm very upset about that, genuinely, that I think there's just too much state testing, and it's diminishing creative thinking and creative teaching, and I don't know how you feel about that.
Oh, I totally agree. It's this no child left behind mentality that has taken away teaching to the whole child.
One size fits all.
I know.
You and I taught when there was non-regents, regents, honors. Now, same test for everybody.
What was the official date of your retirement?
July 1st, 2007.
And your last building assignment?
Was June 23rd, I guess that was.
And the total number of years that you were?
33 years, 180 days.
Okay.
Not a bad memory.
Do you remember what your first annual salary was before taxes?
I think it was just about 10,000. It might have been 9,800. It might have been 10,800. I brought that into my my English department meeting the last day when they were celebrating my retirement, and I held up my salary schedule. I have them all at home. And I look back, I remember thinking I was rich. Like, oh my God, I got every credit card in the book. Did you do that? I was overextended completely, charged everywhere. I felt like, how rich am I? I'm making $9,800.
Yes.
And of
Yes.
course, you and I are very blessed to be people with pensions now.
That's true.
Very fortunate.
Is there anything that you would have done differently?
How lucky am I to be able to say no?
Okay.
I never wanted to go into administration or department head or guidance.
Wonderful.
I was always like teacher. No,
Yeah.
there's really
That's wonderful.
nothing.
What is it that you don't miss?
It's what Joe Giovinale said to me was the daily grind.
Okay.
I don't miss awakening at 5:15 and prepping for 5 classes. You know, it was 33 straight years. I don't miss that grind.
Was there anything that you would like to have accomplished in those 33 years that you didn't get a chance or you weren't able to accomplish? Or can you say with some degree of honesty, I'm done, did what I could?
I think I can say I did what
Okay.
I could. Other parts of my life have fallen apart here and there through the years.
Sure.
But my teaching life, my professional life, like I said to you earlier, John, I feel very blessed. I look back, I have nothing but incredibly wonderful memories of every aspect of my teaching career.
Brentwood's teachers are, finish that. Brentwood teachers are
dedicated.
And Brentwood students are
Lucky.
What was your favorite year of all the 33? Did you have one?
2003 was a really good year. I just had incredible honors class. 2000, let me just think for a second, John.
Yeah.
2003 was, I had great students that year, an awesome honors class. I did a children's book writing project with 4th graders and my honors class that was incredible. Tony Felicio presented the kids with things, and that was a very good year. You know, I don't know why that one was able to be pulled out. That was a very good year.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we should have talked about that we have omitted? Or is there something that we want to say before we conclude?
I would say and thank you for that opportunity, John. I think, maybe you can back me up on this. I already put into the equation the possibility that I'm older now. But I think teaching right now, if someone has just begun teaching this September 2007, as opposed to September 1974, I think it's changed. I think that there are different pressures on teachers that didn't used to exist with scores and grades and test prep. I would say to teachers that even if your first years feel chaotic and challenging, I can promise you, you will love this career. If you're a person who is meant to be a teacher,
Yes.
you will be grateful forever that you found a teaching job and will spend 30 some odd years in this incredible profession, impacting the lives of others.
Yes.
I know you agree.
I do agree.
I mean, you were involved in Maslow Toffler. You made big changes in Brentwood. Huge changes. Maslow Toffler was such a unique. I just heard from Ricky Pavlock.
Did you?
He was at the class reunion, the class of, oh my God, my first graduate in 1977. And he actually mentioned you. And you remember him, Ricky Pavlock?
Yes,
it
I
was
do.
your earliest year.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, the legacy goes on.
Yeah.
The legacy goes on.
Brentwood is a unique community. We're privileged to have been a part of
Absolutely.
this suburban inner city school system.
Yes. Suburban inner, I never heard that phrase before. How
That's
apt.
very, very much what it was. Instead
Yeah.
of having 5-story buildings with the girls' staircases and the boys' staircases that I had, we
Right.
now have an acre of buildings
It's
or
right.
more. It's
It's
all
true.
on 1 or 2 floors.
Yeah, it's amazing when you pull up here and see how huge the school's
But
become.
it's a large place, and miracles are performed.
That's it. Miracles are performed here all the time. And I would always hope that administrators appreciate those miracles. They're part of it. They're part
How
of
are
it.
you going to be remembered, do you think?
She loved teaching.
I love talking to you today.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
This
Thank
was
you
as
for being with
wonderful
us.
as everyone told me it would be. Great
Thanks.
questions.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. This was great.
You think you're out, we pull you back in again.
Yes, you do.
This is an unusual circumstance, as you well know. We did this interview back in October, and we had a problem with the tape, and so we're going to catch the last, we're going to put on the end of this tape the first 12 minutes or so of your interview.
It's kind of like Nixon and the missing tapes.
That's it, exactly. Okay, this, folks, is Judi Hearst Weissman. And I asked you, which we didn't get first time around, where did you get the name Judi?
My parents gave me the name Judith, Judith, and I've been called Judi most of my life. And in around 6th grade, I decided that Judi would be much cuter than Judy. And you know, it is a shortened version of Judith with the TH at the end. So I've been Judi since 6th grade. And it's a good name, not that common. You know, I think it was more popular in my generation.
Did you have other nicknames besides Judi? Was there anything else that you were known by?
No.
Even pet names that somebody in the family had?
My husband calls me Jay, and I love that. He goes, "Hey, Jay."
And speaking of your husband, talk about your family situation. Who is your husband?
My husband is Lenny Weissman, and we've been together 15 years and got married in 1996. We're polar opposites in every way. Oh my goodness. And it works. I adore him.
Ah, wonderful. Where do you live?
Kings Park.
Okay. And this is the first time back to the high school in a while like that?
This is my first time back since I did the new teacher course. Yeah, since October.
In your own family, were you an only child?
I have a brother, Kenny. He's 3 years younger than me. And it was just the two of us.
Let me ask you, if I might, when was Kenny born?
He was born in 1955, so that makes him 3 years younger than me.
And where were you living at the time that
I was
you came
born
into?
and brought up in Long Beach. I still have what they say on the Long Beach welcome sign. I still have sand in my shoes.
Yes.
I love the boardwalk. I've always been drawn to water, the ocean. I'm so glad in Kings Park we're right near the Long Island Sound and the boardwalk. That's great.
What about your brother's personality and your personality? Did you complement one another? Were you different?
No. We're not close, and we see things really differently, unfortunately. We were very close in the college years, but during the period of my mother's illness and her death, we just became increasingly estranged. I'm sad about it, and I really have made great efforts to stay in touch, but I think he's going through a rough patch in his own life.
You know, sometimes people have difficulty dealing with that whole subject.
Yeah, he's been going through a divorce and a lot of loss hit him at once, so.
What about his particular talents and your talents? Is there a strain in the family where you have seen those qualities or those talents before?
I don't want to guess. I think I was certainly closer to my mom, and I was very blessed to have a very successful career and much kudos in my life, and I don't know if that made it difficult for him. I don't know. I wouldn't want to try and get inside his head, but I don't know him. I don't feel at this point I know him well enough to really talk about his talents, things like that.
Growing up too, did you see anything?
Growing up, he was very, very athletic. That's a good point. He was a star baseball player. When he was in day camp, his counselors thought that he was so good at such a young age that my parents sent him to baseball camp to start looking at training for bigger things. And then he played right through high school and not in college. He just, I guess, lost interest. He wasn't playing anymore after high school.
And
He still loves baseball.
What career-wise, what did he do with his life?
Salesman.
He's a salesman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have contact with any other members of the family these days? Is there an extended family that you're in touch with?
My mother passed away in 2004, and I'm very close with her sister, my aunt and uncle in Florida. They're in their 80s now. My aunt has Alzheimer's, and my uncle is just my own personal hero. He treats her with such love and dignity and respect. He's patient with her as she's getting worse with the Alzheimer's. I visit them as often as I can. I adore him. Speak to them all the time by phone. It's rough for him, but he is the last person in the world who would ever complain. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I rehooked, I kind of rehooked up, terrible wording for an English teacher. I reconnected with my cousins on my father's side. Out of the blue, I just heard from my cousin Linny that I'd always had a close relationship with. And I've been to a couple of weddings in the family now. On my father's side of the family, there were a couple of relatives I loved and a couple that were just crazy. And I've seen them all, and it's just amazing how things are still the same. But it's been kind of cool seeing them because it's your blood. I grew up with holidays with them. I would remember Passover at my aunt's house. And so I feel like I think a thing in my life is that I don't have enough blood family near me, close to me, surrounding me. And it's a big loss.
Did when you were younger, the uncle that you're in touch with, was he an important part of your life when you were a little girl?
Rose was. Yeah, my Aunt Sally and Uncle Bill lived around the corner from us. My closest relative was my cousin Bobby, their son. We were the same age. We went through school together.
So there's a history.
Yeah. Bobby's in Vermont now. My cousin Ronnie is out in Utah.
Okay.
Family's all spread out, and I'm very close to my aunt and uncle. I do a great deal of the caretaking with them, as well as their sons.
Judi, what's the memory that you have?
I remember you asked me that in the first interview, and I think the memory that I'm going to tell you is my earliest is actually one brought about by photos. I remember my cousin Bobby and I in strollers at A&S. Do you remember A&S?
Yes, I do.
And most kids today would, in Abraham and Strauss. We were in the department store, and we were in strollers together.
Was it in New York or in Hempstead?
Hempstead. And I was snapping that I had one of those little faggy hats on, and I was snapping it, and I apparently snapped it into my eye and was wailing, and my cousin Bobby thought that was funny. And we were little, but we were just so close growing up. We used to whenever it snowed in Long Beach, we'd walk to the boardwalk and sing the whole way. We had our whole little routine. It was great having a cousin that close.
Your mother's maiden name was what?
Sonnen.
And what was her background? Where did her family come from?
She really was a Long Beach native, amazingly. Her father was from, I believe, Brooklyn. But they settled in Long Beach relatively early. My grandfather owned the big theater, the movie theater in Long Beach. And they opened up a store called Sonen's Venetian Blinds with my Uncle Bill. And they were a very Long Beach family. So I lived in Long Beach, and when I started college, I was living in Long Beach on my own. And the beginning of my teaching career, during those, amazing early years of teaching, I was living in an apartment in Long Beach on the water.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you have a closer relationship that you had one with your mother than with your father.
Right.
What was your father's history? What was his family background?
My father was brought up in Far Rockaway. There were 5 kids in the family. One of the stories that I always remember is his younger brother, Danny. They were having a catch, my father, my uncle R.O.B.S, and Danny. And the ball went in the street, and somehow Danny was the one who went to get the ball, and he was killed, and a car ran him over. And I think that kind of like epitomizes my father's life was a hard one. They didn't have much money. The story goes, he went overseas in the war, and on the boat coming home from the war, he won $2,000 in card games. Gave it to his mother when he got home, and she bought a house in Far Rockaway. And she rented out rooms. I never knew my paternal grandparents, but supposedly my grandmother Dora was a real character.
Did you know your mother's parents?
Yes, I knew my nanny. I was close to my nanny. Her father was a tough guy. A lot of tough guys in my life.
You have a funny memory from childhood?
Funny memory?
Or a good memory. Maybe it's not funny, but
well, I'll tell you an interesting memory is that in going through family photos, my husband loves birthdays. My husband cakes, celebration, family dinners. I just don't love birthdays. I never want to really do these big celebrations. I think about my birthday like we all do. Like when it's your birthday. Don't you think about it that day? This is my birthday. But I never want these big fanfares. And my husband can't go with it. I don't want these big fanfares. But when I got a hold of family albums, all my birthday parties, my third birthday party, my sixth, my seventh, I am crying at every, I mean, it's not a funny memory, but it cracked me up. I'm like, I said to my husband, Lenny, look at this. Every birthday party, I'm crying. I'm sitting like this, I'm frowning. I don't know. it's,
That doesn't happen anymore.
I'm telling you, I was a grumpy little birthday girl. I just don't know what traumatized me, but
Judi, we went through these questions probably, and maybe even a couple of different ones back in October, and here we are in the end of April. You've been busy since then to now.
yes, very fortunately busy.
Yes, and is there anything you want to add this time that I didn't ask you, or that you thought about in the intervening months that should have been on the tape?
Two things I like to say.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say to anyone who might be watching this, if you don't know the process, John Sherin has been doing this history project, and everyone told me it was a wonderful experience. And I envisioned walking in and having you ask me questions about my favorite class at Brentwood and what student was most memorable. And while we addressed that, it was you do such a marvelous job with these interviews. You took me to places. I remember crying a little bit in the first interview, and you made me remember things that I just don't think about frequently. And the other thing I wanted to say is I almost wore my sweatshirt today that has on it the circle of love. Our mutually very good friend Chico was diagnosed with cancer. And as is the way of Brentwood teachers of that generation who were close, we formed a circle of love. You are a part of it. We wear a bracelet for Chico. And I thought the shirt would be such a good Brentwood thing. The shirt has a picture of 4 hands touching a stone at Chico's college, CW Post. And all the hands together are wearing the bracelet, if you can see it in the camera. And I thought to myself, every single hand on the stone is a Brentwood person. Myself, Patty Munson, Chico, his wife, his daughter, Denise Fasano. And I thought how in so many ways that is Brentwood. And for those of us who grew up in what I believe to be the best years of Brentwood, it was being a part of a circle of love. It was being a part of a circle of love that has stayed with me, of
Judi,
which you are a part too.
thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being here.